So, no, I wouldn't say I have a passion for HR.
Welcome back to Human Resources for the People. It's a human capital revolution. Today, we're going to be talking about the unions bolstered by Macron's push in France. It's really interesting. It's really interesting the differences between the United States and France. These pensions are specifically surrounding, the payment of government workers and so forth. And when this happens, you have to think about the United States. So we do have a retirement age. Most people are not, they're not necessarily looking for Social Security. They realize that it's not going to be sufficient in terms of payments. Hopefully, most people are saving for 401k and so forth. And that's not the case in France. And so, recently, Macron has sort of dictatorial. That's maybe a question of phrasing, but some of his actions have been, pretty harsh, right? And that's brought a lot of people into the French trade unions. This article is from Reuters. It's by Lee Thomas, and it chronicles this, and it's a good way to look at it. Since the French unions weren't able to derail the push, and you can see in the background some of the footage from the French unions and its allies in fighting against Macron's push to increase the retirement age, and it chronicles hydroelectric plant worker who joined the CGT, which is a trade union, and they protested by downing tools. And he, who's only 37, and which that's probably the most impressive part of this, right? This is a move from 62 to 64. This isn't exactly a huge move, and B, it's one that obviously only affects a few people, but the French people have decided to stand strong against this, and from this, the companies or the union trade workers have become increasingly powerful. And that's what's really interesting. I think that it says that the CGT leadership saw 30,000 new workers join, which is huge. In addition, 32,000 joined the CFDT, and that's a 40% increase year over year. In fact, interest has been growing with the younger folks in the private sector, which is really, again, fairly interesting. Now, this pension battle is nothing more than a predictable result of the government's costs. I mean, effectively, the government did not budget this money appropriately for this safety net. The boomers are retiring; they don't have enough money. This will mostly happen to all developed countries. You can expect this. You can expect this in the United States. The Social Security age will probably grow and grow and grow, and I don't expect to see any money. Neither should you. And Fringe unions are actually really low. Now, let's be clear here. The United States is a much lower. The United States has 10.3% in the unions with union membership. But the key difference here is the collective bargaining coverage. And this is an interesting thing that many people aren't aware of. And I'll briefly talk on it. So, for example, you may see things about minimum wage in Denmark, for example, which you see on the screen. Denmark actually doesn't have a minimum wage. I don't believe they might cover some people, but not many. And that's because it's actually defined by the collective bargaining. The collective bargaining group for each industry defines the minimum wage. So, for example, you might have the minimum wage for all restaurant workers, right? And that effectively all restaurant workers would be covered under this. And the difference here, to be clear, with respect to the United States is, so if you see here, it says union membership 10.3%, and collective bargaining coverage 12.1%. Well, the 1.8% difference between the two is a right to work states. It's people who are in shops and factories that are covered by a collective bargaining agreement, but they're not actually being paid, or they're not actually paying the union. I actually think that number is probably higher, but I could be wrong. Unions are growing through ground up recruitment, and they've actually done a pretty good job with reaching out to younger people. I think again that this is more of a political stance. You've seen a media encouragement of labor unions compared to the 80s and 90s, and as a result, you've seen young people join in droves in these countries, and I think that that's mostly what you're seeing in the United States when you do see younger folks join. And the interesting thing that I wanted to cover is, in this, it talks about Igor Tchaikovsky and how it's really easy to join and that you can just sign up online quick and easy. And then it says newcomers can leave as easily as they joined. And it says if tomorrow it no longer suits me for whatever reason, I just have to send an email. That's not, I could be wrong here, but that's not the standard, at least in the United States. Generally, it takes a lot of time, maybe a month, maybe a quarter. I've seen some really sort of long and arduous timeframes. And so that's a really different. Now, depends union to union. So let me be clear: the union that you may be familiar with probably it possibly doesn't do this, but or does do this, but the ones that I'm familiar with don't really allow that easily of cancellation. And so you can see growth just as almost as a political protest in France because they can easily step out of it if, for example, Macron bows, which he has not. But thank you very much. I just wanted to cover this. This is pretty interesting, especially from the human resources standpoint. And we'll see you tomorrow on the next video. Bye, guys.